Well, investors, I'm John Roy, Managing Director here at Water Tower Research. I'm very pleased to have the CEO of AEye here today, Blair LaCorte. Blair, how you doing?
Great. Happy late Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Well, Blair, why don't you give us a little bit about you and AEye and LIDR that is all yours?
Sure. I was actually an original investor in AEye many years ago, and then joined the company part-time, and now am the CEO of the company. We went public in August of last year, and we actually produce a very unique type of LIDAR. We call it adaptive LIDAR. It's a very high performance type of LIDAR, and we're going to go into our presentation and show you why we think that the trend around automation and deterministic sensors like LIDAR are going to change the world for the better, and how we think we're going to play in that trend.
Great.
So with that, why don't we kick off the classic disclaimers as a public company. And we usually talk about our 5 investment themes. And there's a couple things that are unique, I think, about these themes. The first being that we always start with delivering high quality spatial information. Because what we really believe is that both partial and full automation are the next level of IoT. IoT, you can distribute information anywhere, you can process it anywhere, you can control things, and you can make things both more efficient and safer. We're now entering an age where those things are not always static. So it could be something that's moving that needs to see its environment, or it could be something that's static that is watching things that are moving, such as a traffic light or a security system. So we really always start with our goal, and our vision is to create spatial data that can be made into information so that systems can make better decisions and increase efficiency and safety. Our second theme is also to overlay these types of technologies onto existing value chains. There's a lot of technology out there, and there's many industries that are using sensors like cameras or radar or infrared. We decided to take a look at what they were doing today, where we could add value, and how to take advantage of the systems and the partnerships and the customers that already existed. So as you'll see in our presentation, we actually look to partner much more like, say, for those of you who have been involved in chip technology, Arm Limited, who designs chips for a lot of different industries, but can implement through almost any partner or any company. The third investment thesis or theme that we have is that we're going to implement disruptive intelligent sensing. I called it adaptive LIDAR. Adaptive LIDAR allows you to have some intelligence in how you collect information, how you process information, and how you distribute that information to make autonomous decisions. Many of you may have seen the movie Maverick, Top Gun. And in that movie, you would see him go up to the jet and talk about the targeting systems, and that they're laser targeting systems. Lasers have been used since 1962 in the military, in telecom, in GIS type implementations, but they've just recently been repurposed for commercial usage. Now, you've seen this in almost every sensing technology, from radar in World War II to RFID in Afghanistan to satellite-based backhauls in Iraq. Many of these things start in a high intensity, high R&D environment, like the Defense Department or telecommunications, and they eventually become embedded in everything you do today, to the point that you don't notice it, but you do notice the benefit for it. We took a very different approach than the rest of the market. Of the 85 companies that started somewhere between 2004 and 2008, most of the companies actually started with building a hardware widget. We actually built a software platform that could be intelligent enough, and we'll show you what we mean by that, that it could be used across industries. So one of the things that we will point out today is that while we have built a very unique sensing technology, it is applied uniquely across many, many different industries. There's not one solution. It's usually customized or integrated. The fourth investment thesis is that given that we're going to be a horizontal technology, something like a router, like what Cisco would do, we also thought greatly about how to reduce hardware costs from the outset. We can have a software controlled LIDAR system, but we're still going to have a hardware component. So what we decided right out of the gate was that we would partner with people who manufactured in high volume, high capacity, and with industrialization skills in each of the markets, so that we could be capital light and we could use a global supply chain through existing manufacturers that already had relationships. This gives us cost and scalability. We're not a hardware company. We're an intelligent software company that happens to use hardware to deliver our product. And then finally, we believe that we have a very experienced management team. Some may say a little more older or mature, but what I would tell you is that we've seen a lot of these implementation trends and how technologies roll out. And we feel very confident that not only will deterministic sensors like LIDAR be embedded in everything, that they'll add a tremendous amount of value. Now, if you take a look, again, using the sensor as maybe a proxy, cameras took about 11 years to actually get implemented at cost into almost everything. Radar took about 15 years. We believe that LIDAR was on a cycle that will be somewhere between 5 and 7 years. So very, very fast implementation. In fact, as we'll show you, you already, if you have an iPhone, have a LIDAR system in your iPhone. Elon Musk, to his chagrin, already has a LIDAR system in his Dragon rocket, and everything in between is looking at implementing these systems. So with that, I'll jump through pretty quickly. 1960s, LIDAR was actually funded by DARPA. You see it roll out in 2004. You see the military actually start to build contests around using LIDAR in commercialization. Early productization has happened over the last 5 years. And if you take a look at where we are today, we have actually just launched a platform that enables us to actually create multiple products through multiple partners. At the end of the day, we believe in the same themes that we set out in 2015. It's software defined, it's edge intelligence, it's modular hardware, and it has a network architecture. What that has produced today, using third parties as a reference point, is we have record-setting performance, we have adaptive intelligence, we're swap optimized, which means size, weight, and cost, and we get solid state reliability, as we did when we designed the systems for the military many years ago. Why LIDAR? Why deterministic sensors? We, unlike many others, don't believe that LIDAR has to replace, say, cameras and radar. We believe it's a complement. But when you make the point of why you would introduce a new sensor, when you take a look at resolution and range, you'll see on the left-hand side, 4D radar, the best in the world today. And then you'll see what an AEye LIDAR would see. You can see that you get much, much better resolution, and you avoid many of the downside edge cases that radar has, like multipath, where it's bouncing off multiple objects and you have to figure out what's real and what's not real. So there is absolutely a complement to using radar and LIDAR together. In fact, we get 1 million times more resolution. On the right-hand side, you'll see one that's probably more intuitive or obvious to you. It's dark out. A camera depends on light. A LIDAR system has its own light source. You can see that we get not only deterministic range, which is why it was used for targeting to begin with, exact range, but we can actually see objects in 3 dimensions, even in contrasting light situations. The edge cases, as Tesla has shown, for white objects or low contrast situations or high speeds and small objects, LIDAR again complements a camera. So what we did is try to take the concepts that we had learned over the past 70 years in the military. You'll see on the left the system that our founder actually was a part of the team to design, which is called the Sniper Pod, the one you'd see in Top Gun Maverick. It was designed to be able to use cameras, radars, and LIDAR systems to track very fast-moving objects in high-risk situations. What we took away from that experiment It's still the most effective and most efficient reconnaissance and targeting system in the world. It's on every US military jet and every NATO jet. Was that some of the keys to transitioning this technology at a lower cost into the commercial world was to not focus on the hardware, to make it modular, plug and play, so that as hardware became more effective, more powerful, or less costly, we could plug and play that hardware, that it would all be software defined, so that you could define, depending on your mission, what information you needed to collect to make a decision. And finally, just like a human, using biomimicry, humans process 80% of their vision in the edge of the network in their visual cortex, not in the center of their brain, which allows us to have quick twitch, which makes us one of the most effective animals in the world at actually seeing objects in motion. Humans are superior at trading off spatial data and temporal, how quickly we scan. And that was what we set out to do with this sensing platform. So when you take a look at the model we decided to use, we decided that in different industries, you would actually have different partners, both in how you actually build the technology and how you manufacture the technology. So in the industrial markets, where there are lower volumes, but more customization, we actually sell our product direct. That could be to an ITS system in a city, for an intersection, that could be to a mining vehicle, that could be on a train, that could be in aerospace and defense. In the automotive market, high volume, highly regulated. Most of the industry started with autonomous vehicles, which would have been much more like industrial, lower volumes, B2B sale. But really what's taken off, which we had predicted, is that you want a little bit of automation in every car that you buy. So it does not have to be fully autonomous, but it has to be autonomous on demand. So do you want it to be autonomous on the highway? Do you want it to be autonomous when you're parking? Do you want it to be autonomous when you're changing lanes? Or do you just want an auto assist system? And so in the automotive markets, we went to the largest automotive companies and licensed our technology over a 2-year evaluation cycle. And so when we sell into those markets, it's based on AI technology, but it's being sold by people who already have relationships with customers. This harkens back to looking at the value chains that exist today and realizing that in high volume, low customization markets, it really has to do with distribution, warranty, liability, which we have the advantage of selling through partners, not having to take on like many of our peers. So let me just deep dive very, very quickly. This is not meant to be a sophisticated technology chart, but more a conceptual technology chart. If you take a look at the majority of our peers today, they basically from the bottom up collect detects or information. They take a LIDR system, they use embedded software to process the information, they pass that information onto a perception system to figure out what it's seeing, and then application software can make decisions on that. It's a one-way loop. You collect as much data as you can, and then you process it. That's why you saw a lot of the early generations of AVs having huge computers in their trunk using a lot of power, because they were using the concept that the more information, the better, and that they actually looked at this as an issue that could be solved by Moore's law. We'll get better computer processing, and eventually you will be able to collect all the information you need, but you will be able to process it fast enough that you can do it in motion. That is not how humans do it. We actually intelligently scan so we can keep moving faster and faster. If you take a look on the right-hand side of this chart, the different approach we took, we decided to build the intelligence into the sensor at the edge of the network, much like a human visual cortex. So all of our base systems, the scanners, the lasers, the receivers are modular, and they actually communicate through a TCP network inside of the sensor. And the operating system that sits on the sensor doesn't just send data out, it can actually take signals in. So if you look at number one, there's an embedded operating system at the edge of the network. If you look at the second major concept, we can take input from a map, from a camera, we can get triggered from a radar system. So like a human, we can use multiple senses. We hear a sound, like a radar sees something very far away, we can then focus on that object. Since we have two-way communication, and since our system doesn't run one pattern over and over again. Third, which is becoming very, very important, is we also built the entire system as a network. So we can do over-the-air updates, and we can also drop in features in the future without changing hardware at all. We can change the way hardware works by changing the software. And finally, in our last earnings call, you'll see we're extending that concept where we can take that perception software, which is determining what the objects are, to make a decision on what to do. We're now able to run perception software on the sensor, in a vehicle or an asset, or we can run it in the cloud. And depending on the application, that gives you the ability to distribute processing and decision-making anywhere in a network. We believe this actually allows us to not only take advantage of Moore's law, which is the ability to drop costs. In fact, LIDAR systems costs have dropped, we believe, somewhere around 90% in the past 4 or 5 years. It also allows us to use Metcalfe's law, which is the more information into a network, especially orthogonal information, allows you to make better decisions faster. Because as we started the presentation, we're not in the LIDAR business, we're in the information business. People buy our technology so that their systems can make better decisions, to be more efficient, and to increase safety for humans. This is a quick primer on why this trend around automation and this trend around intelligent sensing is so important in industries like the automotive industry. On the left-hand side, you'll see what I'll call enhanced intelligence. You know, over the past 50 years, we've tried to make cars smarter by adding in software code to the cars. In fact, in 1978, with the Ford Tornado, we had 25 lines of code. Today, the average ICE engine and engine-driven car actually may have up to 100 million lines of code, but it's distributed in what I'll call brownfield, updated to every system, has its own software system, which needs to be tied together. The advantage of, as we move to EVs, is the advantage that you have of moving from a StarTech phone to an iPhone with a software platform. Now you have very simple operating systems, much less moving parts, and you can optimize the code to be more efficient, and you can add applications on top of it. So what you're going to see over the next 10 years in the automotive industry is that as cars last longer, EVs are expected to last 7 to 10 years, you're going to see the software inside your car be how car companies add value and ultimately make money so that they can keep serving you over time. So let me show you 2 quick examples, one in automotive and trucking, and then I'll take you through industrial, and we'll wrap up and do a few questions. So in the automotive and trucking market, remember, this is a high volume, high functional safety. We sell through major tier 1 partners who license our technology. Our lead partner is Continental, one of the top 3 tier 1s. That means people who make the technology to make a car work in the world. We started production in we announced we would start production on a production line there in 2024. We've already shipped B samples. C samples when you start production. They've already integrated this in, which I think is a very important point, with their camera radar and their ADCUs. So they looked at this as a technology that could add value across the system. We have a common development process, and we're jointly engaged with multiple OEMs. Why is that important? Because when you look at Continental's installed base, this goes back to value chain. We could talk about trying to attack each OEM in the world individually and having the capacity to serve even one project. Or we could work with someone who's already sold 150 million radars, 20 million LIDARs, as well as cameras and ADCUs, and has over 25 OEMs as customers today and 50 brands. So again, very clear distinction between us and many of our brethren who are tech companies trying to sell their technology directly. We license and sell through our partners, very much akin to, say, maybe what a Mobileye did with cameras, where they didn't make the camera, they licensed their chip technology and integrated it with a camera. I'm glad to say, or proud to say, that this year, as we finish the product, we've received numerous awards, the most prestigious being AutoSense's Award of Product of the Year. This is actually the Continental licensed product using our technology, and it is in customers' hands today. We actually are working with Continental and other tier 1s in both auto as well as trucking. different business models. Automotive is embedding your technology so that a consumer can buy it as a secondary sale. Trucking is much more direct because the people who own the trucks have an ROI reason to want them to be more autonomous. Hub-to-hub trucking is the big thing today, where they can make it safer on the highway, and that you can have truck drivers who may be tired have an auto assist system. We have announced in the trucking area that we were chosen by one of the largest platforms. We haven't disclosed the name of that platform yet, but we have talked a lot about what they're doing today and their traction. We've also engaged individually with who the platforms work with, which are the OEMs, and we just did announce in our last earnings call our latest development project directly with an OEM, which is Ford Odyssey. Finally, we are actually getting the support of the chip makers and ecosystem makers, where you need to work with them. As we said, this is a platform. We just recently announced that we've been integrated into the NVIDIA Sim platform so that customers can actually simulate and prototype before they implement the system. I'm going to take a couple slides of commercial traction, then we'll get on to the questions. If you take a look at commercial, what do we mean? It could be ITS, which is traffic control, or tolling, or wrong-way detection. There's major macro trends that are counter-cyclical in these marketplaces. Governments are investing in these type of projects, number one, for safety, number two, for information, so that they can help with traffic flow and efficiency, and number three, because as the EVs start being deployed, it's much more difficult to actually have people tax for roads, because the gas tax isn't exactly highly correlated to an EV. So this is a counter-cyclical trend. Almost every major municipality across the globe is looking on how to invest in new technology. We believe that, as they've already invested in radar and cameras, that deterministic technologies like LIDR will be their next step. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. This is an example of, in Tetra, one of the largest in the world, in implementing systems that track cars at high speeds, like on toll roads or for wrong-way detection. Another big thing that we talk about in the industrial section is aerospace and defense. And we announced a major partnership in that area as well. And please go to our website. We have multiple partnerships in each of these areas. I'm just highlighting maybe one to spark some understanding of our strategy. And we're engaged in multiple customers with them today. Our objectives in 2022 was to really bring our platform into two marketplaces simultaneously. One was through partners like Continental, which is how we transferred the B sample. And the second is where we do sell direct in the industrial markets. It was to continue to focus on the software and the network capabilities, where we think the real value is, and to engage partners and customers worldwide to start to use this technology so that they can tell us how they will use it in the future. And finally, to build out our team and company infrastructure, as we've now been public for over 6 quarters. So I'll end with, again, we start with our goal, which is to give customers better spatial information to enable autonomy, right? We have a very disruptive platform. We've created a value chain that we think is superior for go-to-market, and we're very low-cost manufacturing for cost and scalability, and we believe we have the right team at the right time. So with that, I'll jump back.
Great, Blair. That was a very good and thorough overview of the company. I got a couple questions that have come in. One was a question on the auto RFQ process. Question is basically, where are you going with that, and where are you with that? And related to that is, they also asked about Continental, and is that paving the way for other possible tier 1 deals or other OEMs?
Sure, it's a great question. The automotive industry is extremely sophisticated as it optimizes global supply chain. So the process for building new technology in the car starts 4 years before they actually build it in. And in fact, after you actually get the nod to be in the vehicle, there's usually 2 years of functional safety testing for consumer cars. The terminology that they would use is that they may do an SODW or an evaluation. I just talked about one with Ford, Autoson in the trucking area, where they take the technology, they put it into vehicles, and they do pilot testing with it. Then they may actually do a RFI, which is a request for information. They'll collect information from everyone in the market. That's where you can influence them. They follow that with an RFQ, which is a request for quote with a final spec. There's more negotiation in that process. And then ultimately, they announce a series production. Series production can be a very small thing just for this model and just for a couple of years, or it could be a very big thing. Most of the time, it starts as a beginning, and then you get a follow-on and a follow-on and a follow-on. The auto industry is a phenomenal industry in the sense that once they find a technology that works and that they can pass on to the consumer that they're happy with, they're very loyal. But they're also, very tough customers in the sense that, you have to compete the whole way and into implementation. So when we talk about RFQ processes, unlike many of our peers, we don't do the process directly. That's done through Continental. Continental is actually the vendor of record to the OEMs. And what we've done is they already have 25 OEMs as customers. Our philosophy was to actually allow them using our technology to go to market. And so we're not necessarily allowed to talk too much about it other than to say, we're engaged with multiple of their installed base customers in the process, right? So that's the way we look at RFQs.
Got it. Someone asked about Sanmina. That's your other major, but they're on the industrial side, correct?
Right. So as a licensee, and again, I didn't answer the second half of the question, I guess, is that we have the ability to work with multiple tier ones. And in fact, we have multiple tier ones invested in us. If you go back and look at our original IPO documentation, but it does make sense to have a lead because they will build their manufacturing out first. And then you can follow with other partners as you go on, either buying from that lead or doing their own manufacturing. So when you take a look at Continental, they are one of the largest manufacturers in the world. And we've shown in our earnings calls the facility they have in Ingolstadt, which is world-class, and the sample lines that they're bringing up. On the industrial side, where we sell direct, we do use the same components. And we're looking to use about 80% when we get the converged product done so that we have efficiency in our global supply chains. But we do produce through Sanmina, who is a contract manufacturer. In that case, we are the vendor of record, and we take responsibility for liability and warranty, and we distribute directly. So Sanmina is extremely important to us because all of our markets outside of automotive are supported through that manufacturing line. In our last earnings call, we showed you both their sample line in San Jose, as well as breaking ground for their high velocity line in Thailand.
Right. Yeah, that's what we were saying. Now, there's been a lot of consolidation in the LIDAR space recently. Where does that market stand right now? Do you see more consolidation coming?
Sure. And one of the reasons I showed the timeline early on, and I mentioned the fact that in around 2004 to 2006, when the government really started to signal that they would allow a lot of these technologies that were developed in the government and that were ITAR restricted in the past, just like GPS, just like radar, just like cameras, to be actually brought to commercial usage, we had at peak maybe 85 to 95 companies. So the consolidation started somewhere around 2015, when we started to shake out which technologies were going to be ready for prime time, which weren't. There are currently 9 LIDAR companies that are public. One of them has actually already announced that it will be merging. That will give us to 8. And like any other industry, you're going to have under 10 companies, and some of them will be horizontal, like us, that can sell to every market. Some of them will only be automotive only, which is a portion of our market, and some will be industrial only. So we believe that we're one of only, I would say, 2 to 3 high performance LiDAR systems in the world today. And we believe we're one of only 2 to 3 that have the ability to actually use our technology horizontally, because we're software defined. And we believe that we have a very unique performance profile and a very unique business model. So when you say consolidation, it doesn't always mean that companies will go away. It will mean that they will focus in different parts of the market. So when you bet on us, you're betting on, will high performance LIDAR be out there? And you're betting, will software intelligence to integrate other sensors in and to be able to be adaptive be important to adding value? And you're betting, will our business model be more efficient through partners to get to adoption than maybe trying to sell direct?
Right. And speaking of selling direct, maybe one last question and we'll end up. The tier one partner approach that you're using for automotive, is that really the best one? I mean, I know that's the one you're headed at, but what are the real advantages from your perspective of the partnering approach for tier one?
Right. And, look, everyone has their bias. I mean, we wouldn't be doing it unless we thought it was the best approach, or quite honestly, the only approach. But what you're betting on when you're what we're doing versus other people, you can go back to anyone's documentation, and it's almost impossible to implement into an automaker without having the ability to do manufacturing, the ability to cover working capital. An average manufacturing line for 1 million units, just 1 million units, is 150 million. The average working capital on something like that would be 250 to 400 million. And the warranty and liability goes 15 years from the last day shipped. So when you take a look at maybe some of our peers who have announced that they're becoming a tier one, and you look at how much money they've raised and how many years they've been around, I think that is more akin to what a software vendor would say, as they can produce software very quickly, versus someone implementing hardware into a physical environment that needs to be manufactured and has high capital and working capital constraints. So that is a bet. And we have certain peers of ours who have said they will do that, and they're very intelligent people, and I think they have their reasons for doing it. We decided that we believe the best approach would be more akin to what someone we respect a lot, Mobileye, did, where they didn't become a tier one. They worked with multiple tier ones, or with what Arm Limited did, which we have a lot of respect for, that you worked across multiple markets by being adaptive and redesigning in software how their product would be implemented per market. So the time will tell. I think there will be some people that try to be tier ones. I think that there's a lot of tier ones in the world today who are trying to figure out how not to be tier ones. But there's definitely different ways to do it. We just decided with a horizontal technology that we were not going to take on direct sales in a highly regulated environment that had very, very high capital requirements, coverage model requirements, and warranty and liability, which one warranty and liability for a company could severely impact them.
Well, great. Well, Blair, this has been a great overview of AI and what you guys are doing. It sounds like it's super interesting in terms of growth potential, and technology looks cool myself. So investors, if you have any questions, just send them forward. We'll try and get them answered. And Blair, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you for your time. And thanks everyone for investing their time.